everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rosie Speaks. Today, I have Mistress Viscountess Margaret Grym. Hi! So,
Hi.
for those of you who are in Caid, we only have two resident Viscountesses. We have Viscountess Larissa de Griffin, and we have Viscountess Villia. I'm not going to pretend to say her last name. But for those of you who do know her, you know her, and she's amazing as Malin. But her Swedish first name starts with a W and is pronounced Vilja, so I'm not going to try to pronounce the last one. So tell me, how did you, what is a Viscountess?
So a Viscountess is somebody who has been the consort for the sovereign in the principality list. So in the West, we have kingdoms and principalities and baronies and cantons and shires and all this stuff. So the principalities hold lands for the kingdoms because the kingdom is so huge. And I was very blessed to be consort to Sir James Christoph, and he won our coronet tournament, and thus he is the sovereign and I am the consort. So he was prince and I was princess. We fulfilled our reign of 6 months, give or take, because there's the time from step up and then step down. And when you complete your reign, then you are bestowed the title of Viscount or Viscountess. So I completed a reign.
Yay! That's amazing.
Perfect.
So that is super cool. I have I know in Caid it is something that people are just like not really sure what the differences are. So just real quick before I get into like the big meaty questions, and by meaty I mean fun, obviously. What would you call a Viscountess or a Viscount? Because you know how a countess and a count are their excellencies, and a duke and a duchess are their graces. So what would be the title for a Viscount or a Viscountess?
We would also be excellencies.
Fantastic. Well, now that we've got the cultural differences and the new different kingdom things out of the way, I have a big question for you that I have started to ask most of my guests. How did you find the SEA?
So my best friend, who in the SCA is my sister, Catherine Grym. She and I met in college, like when the dinosaurs roamed the earth and rocks were soft. We did theater together, and we used to go to various Renaissance festivals because we had fun. We got to dress up in costumes, and we have a friend that she knew growing up, and he was like, well, if you like this Renaissance fair thing, you might like the SCA, so you should come check it out. And we were like, okay, that sounds cool. And we love him dearly. But what he meant by come join the SCA, you're really gonna like this, is we were part of a very fringy household. So we rolled in there as soon as we got out of work, and we drank and we partied and we listened to the drums all night long, and we never went to court, and we didn't go watch fighting. We did like to go out and visit the vendors. There were many more vendors in the West back then. And we used to watch the archery and things like that. But it was just like we were in our college years. So we hang out in our funny clothes and we have a good time. And then Sunday morning, we were packed and rolled out before anyone got out of bed. So it was like pitch dark, and House Bedlam, which is still an active household, was off-site. So this went on for a while, and this was back in 2003. So, you know, it's been a while. And then at a certain point, like, we kind of stopped, some of us stopped going to events, and then we started to go again. And it was a totally different society in just this time frame between 2003 and 2010. The society had changed so much. And Catherine Grym, my best friend, was we were sitting around and she was like, you know, this camping and drinking is fun and all, but I could do that in Yosemite. So we're either gonna play this game for real or I'm out. And Bedlam's done. And so the very next day, people started getting up and going to look for jobs. The Baroness of Darkwood, Mercy Grym, our other sister, that very next morning went out, found a herald, and learned to field herald. So a few months down the road, March Crown is coming up and we're like, oh, well, we should probably do better about our sleeping accommodations. Let's make A-frames, Viking 9-board A-frames. So in a week's time, we busted out A-frames and we got all of our stuff and we showed up and we're like, all right, we're here. But before we busted out with these A-frames, we showed up to our local canton meeting and the numbers in Bedlam were equal to the number of people that came to the canton meetings. So it doubled the participation in our canton meetings. And then suddenly we all started taking on jobs. At that March Crown, I went out and I marshaled. I learned to marshal. So we all were like, hi, we're here. What can we do for you? And we just hit the ground running. And that was in 2012. And then I got my AOA in 2011 from Ajax and Uta. So we've just fringy, long break, we're back. What can we do for you? And that's where the service began.
Amazing. That is very similar to sort of similar to how me and my friends and our parents came to be. I grew up in a fringy pirate household. And we sort of did the same thing. It was lots of partying, lots of hanging out. We had the best parties, and sometimes we still do. And then out of nowhere, a new member came along, and she was just like, no, this is boring. I don't want to sit in my camp all day. If I wanted to sit at home, I would stay at home in the air conditioning. Let's do something. And then they proceeded to run the trash crew for Great Western War for nearly a decade. Our household did trash. And actually, I might be over exaggerating. I think it was only 4 or 5 years. But in trash crew years, that's nearly a decade. If anybody's done trash crew at any sort of war, it's nearly a decade. 2 years is a lot of years. 5 is crazy. And it sort of shifted, and it sort of split off and became, so there was the Black Rune Free Company, and then there was the Indigo Rose, which was the household that had the volunteers and the workers and the fighters and the this and the that. And now it's become this multi-tiered, multifaceted group where there's the Black Rune Free Company, and then there's the Indigo Rose, and then there's this household and that household, and then there's our generation of people that created a spin-off household. My brother and sister-in-law actually created it called the Boys of Black Rune, where it's all kids. I say we're all still 18, but we're all in our late 20s and early 30s now. Because it's been a decade since we did that, or since they did that. But yeah, that's amazing. It morphs. And that's all it took. Yeah. It took one person to just be like, this is boring. Let's do something different. And something different happened. All it takes is just one voice. So, absolutely. On that story note, I hear you were the Princess of Snark. Is this a true statement, or am I being told lies?
Oh no, and we can absolutely blame that one on Sir James Kristoff. So James and I met through Sir Helga Skaldmare. through the society. And James and I were instant friends. And you know, I'm kind of snarky, but you know, there's a difference between, is cussing allowed? There's difference between being snarky and then there's just being an asshole.
This is a rated R show unless it specifies otherwise.
Okay. So there's difference between being snarky and playful, and there's difference between being mean and an asshole. And my snark, if I'm being snarky, mean, and an asshole to you, it's probably because I don't like you. My snark is playful and like sassy, right? So James and I have a great rapport, and you know, I think nothing of it. We're just, you know, shucking and jiving back and forth, and that's how our friendship has always been. Well, I had a consort, a fighter before, and he took a break from the SCA. It was my friend's younger brother, and which was funny in itself, because one time he introduced to me as his lady, Margaret, and I was like, ho, we're like 12 years apart, let's be clear. I am a lady, I am not your lady, because I don't want the society thinking that I'm cruising the junior high for dates, you know? That's just how it goes. So I wasn't a consort for a very long time. And then one day I was just like, hey, James, let me run this by you. And I was like, hey, we're friends. You fight. I used to consort. I mean, let's be clear, I'm not a really good consort, but I marshal, and so I'm always on the field, and I enjoy the aspect of fighting, and maybe we can become a fighter consort relationship there. What do you think? And he was like, I really like that idea. I was like, all right. So Golden Beltane comes up. Golden Beltane. And it's the first tournament that he fights for me is a tournament that there was there. And we process up in invocation, and he introduces us, and this is right when His Grace Hans and Her Grace Ebony, this was the day that they had stepped up as king and queen for their second time together. And I'm standing there trying to be all, look at me, I'm inspirational, smiling, and James is talking to their majesties, and he's, today I come before you, and he's super flowery, and I fight for this day for her snark, Margaret Grym. Margaret Graham, actually. And he said my name wrong, because my last name used to be Graham. But he introduces me of my snark, Marguerite Graham. And suddenly I look at him, and then I look at their majesties, and I'm like, what can you do? So that is where the snark started. He was inspired by my snark, because that is the friendship he and I have, right? And I'm just like, say what? So every time he has fought for me since then, he has mentioned the snark, except once, and it might have been the day of his knighting. That was at a coronet. It might, and was it a coronet? Yeah, it was a coronet. It was a tournament. The day of his knighting. He may not have mentioned it. So then flash forward to Fall Coronet 2018. That morning, we're talking, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna go, it's gonna be great. You let me know what you need, blah, blah, blah. Could you maybe not mention the snark? And he takes a step back and he's like, oh, okay. So then he goes out at invocation, and the speech is even more flowery than it has ever been. And then the snark comes in. And I'm just like, I guess that's it. And he won that tournament. So therefore, I am the Princess of Snark. So yes, I'm pretty snarky. But
that
it is
ultimately amazing.
It is all James's fault.
Oh, of course.
So
absolutely. There's no way that it's not James's fault. I got to meet James Kristoff for the very first time at his knighting. So my partner and I, Brienne, had not been to a Westie event before. And at the time, which is funny because I've been in the SEA for 25 years. So you would have thought that I would have gone outside of Caid. I didn't. Not until he was knighted. Or till James Kristoff was knighted. And I went up there to see a couple of our friends. And Helga was on the throne, and her and I have been friends for a really long time. And she was I think that we ended up at that Miss Coronet because she made some silly comment to me about how we wouldn't drive 6 hours to come to one of their events, because in Caid, the longest drive is only 3.5 hours. So obviously she couldn't be right. So we showed up.
Right.
And we were there, and it was really funny because it was Miss Coronet that year. And I got to see Brandon fight James Kristoff and Hansa and all these people. And of course, like, I had never seen I'd not seen another kingdom's peerage ceremony before, except for at like Great Western War. But I'm not sure it counts obviously, but it's different when it's like in your space. Because like when a foreign king or queen is investing a person in a peerage at a big war like Great West or Australia or something like that, it's for the masses. It's to get like everybody around. But it is so different watching culture happen in the moment. So getting to experience that was really fun. And at the time we were volunteer stewards for Great West. So we got to get up and talk, and it was really cool. That was our first Westie event ever. He's a funny guy. I like James.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, he's a crack up.
Okay, so this is fall 2018. James Kristoff has won Coronet. When did you guys step up?
Correct.
You guys stepped up in November?
We stepped up. Correct.
Yeah? Okay. So you guys, what are some of the most unforgettable moments you had as princess?
Well, a lot of people say, oh, there are so many things, and there's just all these things, and I just can't name one. I have to name them all. So yes, a lot of wonderful, beautiful things happened during that reign. So I too didn't really ever travel very far outside of my own kingdom. I've been down to Great Western War many a times. I did go to the emergency crowning Caid because Hans and Helga were king at the time. I was one of their heads of courts. I did get to go out to Marketplace at Merca that same year. But so that was when I first really started traveling out of the kingdom. So when James won Coronet, his work schedule was supposed to be a little more lenient and open up. And so we had gone through all of these lists of events that we were going to attend. And so there's a couple of really shining moments. So I got to go to Gulf Wars. He went to Australia, I went to Gulf Wars. And it's funny that we talk about the fringy pirates, because one of the first really, really memorable moment of being princess was going out to Gulf Wars, and we're at Anstiora chili night. So the Anstiorans make a bunch of chili, and you go out and you come over for dinner. And so I'm standing there and I'm putting jalapenos on my chili, and I'm like loading up the jalapenos. And this young man who was probably in his 20s, and let's be clear, I am in my 40s. So he's like super adorable, just youthful, right? And he says something funny about the amount of jalapenos on my chili, and I make a snarky, playful comment back, and and he looks at me and he says something about being a fringy pirate and blah blah blah. I go, oh, we're fringy pirates, and I was like, are you kidding me? I love fringy pirates. I used to be a fringy pirate. You know, sometimes things happen, and I point to my head, and he had been looking at the chili and looking at I don't know what else, but not my head. Funny. And then he like, his eyes go up and he looks at me and sees the coronet, and his eyes get as big as saucers. And he was the sweetest boy. And he like scurries away. I was like, well, that was pretty funny. I mean, I thought he was pretty great. I didn't mean to scare him off. So we're sitting there, and it's myself and Sir Geoffrey Scott, Catherine of Wessex, their Majesties Connor and Issa, and we're all sitting there hanging out. And I turn around, and Fringy Pirate Boy and his friends are sitting behind us, and we're talking. And he said something, and I turned around, and I was like, "Oh, it's you!" I was like, so I get his name, and I introduce him to their Majesties West, and we all sat there, and we had a good 15-minute conversation. And it really, ultimately, my goal was to like show him, to show him that, you know, back when I was fringy, this was like, oh, you don't got to be scared of us. I am so happy to I'm happy to talk to you, and I am happy to break bread with you. And it's all wonderful. And he was so sweet. And he was like, oh, Your Highness, thank you so much. And like, I was like, you're welcome, friend. Here's the coin from my reign. This is where we'll be. Let's hang out later. So making friends from other kingdoms that clearly like had some peer fear. Because I mean, I had peer fear. But I was like, no. Don't worry about that. I'm not that kind of peer. And then okay, so there's two more things. The second thing was we had some issues with events and not being able to cram in enough elevations at events. And so I was very honored to be able to have Master Carius Hutzelman's elevation at one of our events. It was at our investing. So Master Carius is one of my closest friends, and I was very, very honored to have his elevation be at our investiture. And I gifted him one of my pelican medallions. So, and then the very last thing is Sir Brian of Bellatrix has been in the society his entire life. He has reigned, his brother has reigned, his parents have reigned, his mother is a beloved figurehead in the society. And at James's and my coronet list, we had a 3-way finals that day, and Sir Brian he won the Silver Ivy for his lady. So when you do not win the tournament, you are the Silver Ivy. But looking at his awards list and knowing Brian, because he's one of the first SCA friends I made outside of the SCA through mutual friends, and seeing all this service that he does, and he's a pelican, and finding out that he did not have a Corolla Aulica for service, it is like below the leaf of merit. And it's a Principality Service Award. It was my greatest honor to be able to award him with the Corolla Aulica for service, because he did the work on the coronets. He helped make the coronet team, helped make the Sword of State for the Principality. And to gift that to him was such an honor. And the thing that he whispered to me when I am putting the award around his neck is, a pelican getting a service award, with his little tears in his eyes. So it killed me. That is probably the greatest joy of the entire reign. So yeah.
That is the best. Sorry, this is Pippin. He's in
Hi, Pippin.
He's in his zoomy phase right now.
Oh yes.
And is having to eat me. Excuse me. That's the best story ever. All of those are incredible stories. But I really want to touch on you talking about that fringy pirate boy from Go Force, because
yeah,
everything about that story embodies what I want to do with this podcast. So we have in Kaid, and even in some of our, like, even out of Kaid, because there are lots of people that are in like my household and some of the other like households with lots of young people. So like the horsemen out here in Kaid have a lot of very young people, but they're not all out here in Kaid.
Ew.
And so a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but there is enough people that I have heard talk about peer fear that I was just like, wait a minute, all these people that you would talk to just normally without, if you didn't like the kid who was looking at your jalapenos instead of your head, jalapenos. It's going to be a new euphemism that only I'm going to understand, and I'm going to tell it to all my friends, and it's going to be really funny. Where he was just like,
he was like jalapenos.
well,
like, this lady's gonna eat all of those jalapenos? I'm like,
yeah, I am. Jalapenos are bomb.
maybe that's why I'm spicy.
It adds to your snark. I love it. So a lot of people have literally it is from forehead up terrifies people. And
yes.
And I understand. So it's really interesting. In recording time, we're in about the middle of July, and I was going through a bunch of my old photos, looking for a specific photo for one of the other episodes that I was working on. And I came across a whole bunch of pictures of me in the SEA 25 years ago or 22 years ago. And it is insane seeing like pictures of me where I'm just like, oh, look at all these people who I've literally known for 20 years who are, I am this tall and they are kings and queens. And now we go out and hang out at like outside of the SEA. And so it's hard for me to talk about peer fear because I don't have peer fear, or at least for me, it's not, I'm not afraid of the peerage or the station. It's the, like, I still get heart palpitations talking to Havek. In action.
So we left off getting palpitations about talking to Havek.
Yeah, I still get heart palpitations talking to Havek. But, like, have you seen him? He looks like a statue. He does. And it's like, so the very first time I got to meet Havek, like, face to face, talking to him was actually your step down. Ulf and I have been friends since we were actual babies. So I got to go up and watch him become Prince of the Mists with Theory. And that was the very first time that I got to meet Havek. And it was by far, he's just like so stoic and in the best way possible, because he just looks like this like epic painting that like somehow came to life. And so I think that honestly, if I'm being perfectly frank, if you look like the way that you look, your garb and if you look like you're from a painting, I'm probably afraid to talk to you because you belong in a painting and not talking to me on my show or in person or whatever, because you should be like hanging on a wall.
I feel that.
But like,
I feel that.
But there are many other people who don't have the same thought process like that, where it's like literally I could be having this whole conversation with somebody and we could be going to town talking about jalapenos and chili and spice and all this other stuff, and the second it is, oh, well, let me introduce you to my prince, or hi, I'm Mistress so-and-so, suddenly everything is scary. And I'm all I'm trying to do, like my whole goal with this show, is to show people that even though they have, like, people have coronets or titles or whatever, they still want to talk to you about jalapenos. I promise you. They 100% want to talk to you about jalapenos. So that's like an amazing story. Perfectly tied into my, ow! Hey, okay, hold on. My dog is, hey, no. Hey, you be nice. No. Okay, sorry. Pippin is still learning how to be a puppy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that story perfectly tied in. I love that.
Well, and it's funny because this last Great Western War, when Her Highness Sarah was Lady of the Mists, we were over at the Cock and Bull's Tavern. And I had been doing some work at the tavern for Joel. I made beignets. It was beignet night. And so I was not wearing my coronet because one does not fry beignets while wearing coronets and pearls. So I was wearing a tunic and some pants, and I brought a coat, and I had my pelican medallion because I always have a pelican medallion, and I always have primarily this big honkin' one. But I had a coat on, and you couldn't see, there was nobody, right? And so I'm talking to this young gentle from Kaid, very sweet, super nice kid, and we're talking, and various hats are walking by, and he's like, oh, and I'm like, so we're chatting, and he's like, oh yeah, he's talking about how he hasn't had very many good experiences with peers in his area. And I was like, well, that is really unfortunate. I was like, I'm so sorry to hear that. Are they here? Do you want to point them out to me? Like, in my mind, I'm like, well, let's go talk to those peers. Like, you had a bad experience?
Let's figure out why.
And I was just like, oh, I'm so sorry, honey. Like, that's really unfortunate. Well, why don't you point them out to me and we can go talk to them? And he was just like, And then Her Highness comes up and she talks to him. She's like, oh, I'm so glad that you met Viscountess Maggie. She had my job last year. And he stops and he looks at her and he looks at me and his eyes are super big. And I'm like, I also have one of these too, but I'm still not scary. And then, so because of that, the very next day, we were hanging out at 3DC with Mistress Theodora Groves, and she had a box full of googly eyes. I was like, let me see those. So I stuck 2 googly eyes to my Viscounty coronet. So my little Viscounty coronet, it has a blue lapis in it, but it also has little googly eyes above it. So when I put it on with my turban, it looks like a nose and eyeballs. And then I went and found him the next day and told him, see, can't be scary if you have googly eyes.
Oh my gosh.
It just makes me sad that people would be scared. So I haven't bothered prying the googly eyes off. At this point, I feel like it's sort of me.
I love it. And funnily enough, it's a question that I actually had to ask you, was about your googly-eyed coronet. So that's a perfect segue. I love it. Oh, hold on.
It scared somebody, guys.
Please hold. One of my pearls strands are about to fall off. Hazard of having old jewelry is like, sometimes it just decides, oh, I don't want to work anymore today. Right. In Kaid, I have noticed that, and I believe that I only noticed this because this is my home and this is where I've spent the past 25 years. So I am sure that there are people outside of Kaid who have peer fear and who experience and who have negative experience with peers. But I really try to bring everybody together because and and Joel's Tavern is a great place for that. So I'm going to tell you a fun story that, and try not get my friends in trouble, but it's okay because it was funny. So I have known Shea, Duchess Shea out of Ontier. Her and my mom were friends before I was born. So it's been a hot minute. And I've also known Kiartan for roughly that same amount of time, separately, but roughly the same amount of time. And I had just met Duchess Livia, and her and I became very fast friends at West Ontier when I secretly got all the prince and princesses, all the royal prince and princesses. So not the principality prince and princesses, but the prince and princesses who were going to eventually step up as king and queen of a barony, or I'm sorry, of a kingdom. I got them all out of court. And so I convinced them all to just hang out in the back so that we didn't crowd all the sitting royals, because it would be impolite to take the spotlight away from people who were currently doing the work when they were going to have the next 6 to 9 months to do the work. So we all became very quick friends over some food and beverages. And then at Great Western War, I'm telling Livia and one of her ladies in waiting about how I've known Shea and Kiartan for a very long time. And she's like, no way, no way, no way. Do you think Kiartan remembers? And I'm like, I mean, I'm not like, not to toot my own horn, but I'm not an unknown human being in my kingdom. Like people a lot of people know who I am. So I'm pretty sure that he would remember. He is also the first knight who put my boyfriend in armor. So I think he might remember these things. She's just like, no, he's not going to remember. So her and I stroll up very casually, arm in arm, to this big group of humans. And initially, I saw Hansa, Joel. What's Joel's SE name?
Joel the Brewer.
No, Joel, Livia's husband.
Oh, okay.
Joel, Livia's husband. No, you're good, because that Joel was not there. But Joel, Livia's husband, whose name I will eventually remember, but I can't because I only know him as Joel. No! Sorry, my dog is trying to knock my wine bottles over. So I only see like 4 people, and then suddenly Livia and I are in the middle of this big ass circle of people at Joel's Tavern. And if you've ever been, and like you've been there, you know how it sort of conglomerates into several very large groups of people. I ended up in the very center of a circle with 4 sitting kings, 4 dukes, and like 6 other knights. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I know all these people. And then I got to go ahead, and Livia insisted that I tell the story of how Kiartan's known me since I was a child into this group of humans. And it was very funny because I may or may not have been dressed mildly inappropriate. And now it was appropriate for the time period that I was portraying, because I was chief lady for Sita or I was not chief lady yet, but I was going to be the chief lady for Sita and Wilhelm for their next reign. So I was in full Egyptian.
Right.
Well, the Egyptians sometimes have their front seams down to the belly button. And I may or may not have been in that getup and in that dress that I spent a whole lot of time working on. And so I am in the middle of this circle of knights and dukes and sitting kings, and Duchess Livia and I are just like, are just like, how is she a child? And Kjartan is sitting there, and I don't know if I've ever seen him turn any redder. Because he's sitting there, and hey, that's my water, bro. He's sitting there talking about how he's known me since I was 2 years old, and I am very much dressed like an adult. And poor Kjartan's just like, what am I supposed to say here? What do I do? And Kjartan's like, yeah, I've definitely known her for her whole life. It's okay. But that was probably one of just the most amusing moments I've had moving from childhood to adulthood in the SEA. Man. Well, that was a rabbit hole that I got distracted on, and my dog is now drinking the wine that he spilled because, dogs. I would like to ask you how you got into Persians.
The first court that I was ever on was the Principality of Reign of Sir Heinrich and Inara. Not to be confused with Honora. Sir Heinrich and Inara. She wore Middle Eastern clothing, Persian and Turkish clothing. And that's how I got interested in wearing it. And ultimately, it is pretty dang comfy. I mean, let's be clear. I am very accident prone. So if I am going to be at an event and there is going to be a gopher hole the size of the Grand Canyon, I am going to fall in it. So I better darn well be wearing pants. And voila! Middle Eastern clothing. Women wear pants. I used to wear coat hardies. Now I wear Persians because pants. And ultimately that's it. But that was her garb of choice. And when they stepped up, and that is what he asked us to match what they were wearing. And so that is when I first got into it. And it's just kind of like, where I can sew, I'm not the best seamstress, but I'm really okay with throwing money at that problem. I say save up for it. It's not like I'm being frivolous. Yeah, I'm not making money, but I save up for the things I want. There is a lady, she always understood at Great Western War in Kaid. Her name is Beth. She does the coats. They're period. She is amazing. This is one of her coats. Like every year, I buy one from her. So I just adore her. It's the sweetest thing.
Duchess Sita wears Persians and Egyptians. So she floats back and forth between the whole Persian with the coats and the pants and the gauntlets and the everything, to the fitted, very fitted Egyptians. And it was really fun because Beth goes to Potrero War, which is a baronial war down here in Kaid, and it was the first or second time that I ever went into her store that I can remember, and the colors alone, I just cried because it's so beautiful. And I asked, it's really funny because I earlier today in recording time, about an hour before I was supposed to hop on with Maggie here, I decided I needed new garb because the garb that I had was not good enough, and I've worn all of it in all of my episodes, which is not true at all because I have Germans and Italians and a shit ton of other Vikings, but it's 106 here, so I was not about to put on Italians for an episode. So I was just like, you know what? I do not have enough colors. All of my garb is either maroon or green or blue. And that's about it. I don't know why. but all of it are those colors. So I went into the endless pit that is our garage and went into one of our garb bins because there are 6 humans that live in this house, and 2 of us are seamstresses to our core. So we just have like walls of fabric. And so I went in and I found this gorgeous like purple wine gauze and decided, I looked at the clock and I said, it's 6:15. I have to record at 7:30. Do I have time to make, do I have time? And I sort of did. I mean, it's constructed, it's on, there are seams, there's a neck hole, there's no hem, but you can't see that. And I am stoked about it. Persians have inspired me to add color to my garb. A lot of the stuff that I was told, or that I feel like I've been told, was that a lot of your garb is supposed to be very muted and very natural tone and all these things. It is a thing that I was told. I swear to God, your garb, unless you are recreating a specific thing, generally your garb would be natural tone or like green or brown. So for periodness, when you're going through the Norse things, I was told that your color options were pretty much blue, black, brown, nude, or like the natural tones, or green sometimes. And so that's a sentence that I was told one time and has for whatever reason stuck in my head. And quarantine mixed with all these gorgeous Persians that I keep seeing with you and Princess Sarah and Her Highness Sita and all the other incredible things. I just need more color in my life. So
absolutely,
I'm all about it because the colors and the patterns and the everything, it's my favorite thing ever. Okay, so we're getting close to an hour, but I have to,
okay.
I have to know something. I hear you have chickens.
I do.
And ducks.
I do.
And I need to know about them. I also really need to know about your ducks' names. Princess Sarah tells me that they're incredible, but I need you to tell me about them before we go.
So my husband, Master Francisco de Salamanca, Master of the Pelican, when we got married and our 1-year wedding anniversary was coming up, he was like, I don't know, like, what do you want to do? Like, we could go get some, do you want to get chickens? And I was like, because we had been talking about it, I was like, hell yeah, I want to go get chickens. He's like, I mean, are you sure you want chickens? I was like, yeah, chickens. I grew up with chickens and ducks. I lived in the country up until I was in the 5th grade. I'm pretty savvy on how to take care of and whatever. He's like, I don't know, but maybe what about ducks? I was like, no, I think let's start with chickens. He's like, but ducks. And I'm like, chickens. So on our 1-year wedding anniversary, we went out to the feed store in Gilroy, and we got 4 chicks. We got 2 bantams and 2 Rhode Island Reds. So bantams are like nugget sized. They are like there's a Nerf football, and then there's the Nerf mini football. A bantam chicken is like the size of a Nerf mini. So we got 2 Reds, which are pretty hefty size, prolific egg layers, and 2 bantams. Now with chicks, when you buy chicks, you have to expect that half of them are not going to make it because they're fragile. Well, we were lucky. We lost 1. And then as the chickens started to mature, we noticed that one of our bantams was a rooster, which we are allowed to have roosters where we live because we are not in town, but we don't want a rooster because we don't want more chicks. So a girlfriend that I work with up in San Jose, her dad was looking for a rooster. I was like, well, I've got one for you. And he was very tame, hand raised. They came, picked him up, named him Perez, took him home. So that left us with Wilma and Betty, who my husband named, like Wilma Flintstone because she was a redhead, and Betty Rubble because she was black, like our little black bantam. So we have Betty and Wilma, right? So, but my husband was like, ducks, like obsessed with ducks. So we're approaching our 2-year wedding anniversary. It's about like a month before our second wedding anniversary. And I'm at the Tractor Supply store picking up feed for the girls. And I happen to notice that they have ducklings. And so I go over there and I'm staring at the ducks. And so I get the kid over there. I'm like, all right, tell me about your ducks. And he's like, oh, well, you know, I was like, no, I know about ducks. I need to know what is the minimum that you have to buy, because there are these people who go in and they'll buy a duckling for their kid for Easter, and they are not Easter pets. So stores have a minimum required purchase. And he's like, oh, it's a minimum of 2. And I was like, that's it? I mean, I would have thought it would have been 6. Like 2 is, all right, fine. Give me 2 ducks. That one and that one. They look feisty. So I picked 1 Indian runner, which is really tall and upright, and 1 mallard. Now, a lot of people confuse mallards for immediately meaning male, because they think, oh, that green-headed duck, that's a mallard. Well, that is a mallard, but that is a drake. So the drake is the male, the hen is the female. So I've got this short, squat duck and this tall, lengthy one, but they were little fluff balls when we got them. So we bring them home, and my husband, he's the namer of the animals because he has all the creative names. I mean, hello, if you've seen on my Facebook, the big white cat, New Apocalypse Yarn Killer. So we've got New Apocalypse Yarn Killer, Betty Rubble, Wilma Flintstone. And he's like, well, I don't know, what do we name the ducks? And he's like, Daffy, Daisy, I don't know. And I was like, well, what about, I was like, well, what's Spanish for duck? And he's like, pato. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I'm Googling, he's like, what are you doing? I was like, so the other one will be canard. And he's like, what? It's like, yeah, we have pato and canard. He's like, I like it. And he's like, wait, our ducks' names are duck and duck? I was like, yes. So we had Wilma Betty, pato and canard. And then I picked up this other chicken off of a group because her bonded partner was killed by a fox and the other chickens were bullying her. So I picked her up and brought her home, and she's another bantam. And then he's like, well, what are we going to name this one? I was like, I mean, Goose is the only logical name. So we have Betty, Wilma, Duck, Duck, Goose. And then, because we're ridiculous. So then this spring, because we actually lost Wilma, she passed away. It was very sad. We picked up some more chicks. My husband picked up 6 chickens, baby chicks. So he got like 2 barred rock hens, 2 buff Orpingtons, and 2 leghorns. And then a couple weeks later, he went back and got 2 Rhode Island Reds and 2 Silkies. So we had 10 new chicks. And as the 6 are getting bigger, you know, we're kind of trying to think of like names for them. And so he and Sarah were talking about naming them after song titles that are girls' names. So you could have one named Sarah. You could have one named Rhiannon. You could have one named like Rosanna, you know, just like all these names. So he's feeding him one day, and one bit him. Like, bit him, like his finger and bit him. And he was like, that's it. So now they're called the Sinister 6. And then the other 4 are called the Fantastic 4 because they can do no wrong. They didn't bite him. So we've got some comic book nerddom and just general all-around geekery. So yeah, we've got, you know, Duck, Duck, and Goose. Yeah. So we have lots of feathered fowl. It turns out, though, that out of our 10 new chickens, 3 of them are for sure boys. So we will be rehoming some boys soon.
When they're all grown up.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to go on a tangent really quick about your husband being bit by the chicken.
Bit. Literally bit. Then he joked about becoming a were-chicken.
So, okay, I have a niece who at this moment is 18 months old. Actually, I think today she is 18 months old. And so last Christmas we were at my boyfriend's dad's house, and they have chickens. And we were up in their little chicken area, and there's like chickens and like a garden. They live in the middle of nowhere in Hemet. Like they have a whole ass mountain. So we were like climbing through the mountains with my niece, whose favorite thing in the world at the time was stairs. She had just learned how to use them. So there's this like just freshly 1 year old. So her birthday's in October. We're at Grandpa's house in December or the end of November for like Thanksgiving. And we're over there, and all of the big kids, so it's me and my boyfriend and his sisters and their partners, we're all fucking with the chickens. All of us are fucking with the chickens. Because that's what you do when you have, because they have like 40 chickens. They don't just have like 8 chickens. They have 2 pens full of chickens.
Right.
And so we're out there, and we're like feeding the chickens, and we're like playing with the chickens and like poking like little pieces of hay for the chickens to like fuck with and play with. And so my niece saw me and my sister-in-law's boyfriend were like putting the little sticks or whatever in the cage. And so she picks up a rock and tries to give the rock to the chickens because we're giving them hay. So she could obviously give them a rock, right? So she puts the rock and like tries to put the rock in the little, in the, like through the fence, and the chicken like nips at the rock and it freaks her out. So she drops the rock and she like screams a little and she like jumps back. And then she's just like, wait, no, it's okay. And then she goes and we give her like hay. And so she's like putting hay and the chicken's like getting the hay and she's like laughing. But here's where the insane like awareness that children have really comes to pass. So my sister-in-law's boyfriend, who is a grown-ass man, puts his finger in the cage to touch the chicken. But the chicken bites him. But he's a grown-ass man, so he doesn't do anything. Because this chicken, it doesn't like really hurt. It's just like sort of startling. So he's like doing it, and he's like touching the chicken and playing with the chicken, and he's like crouched down at my niece's level, but is like on the other side. So there's two cages, and he's on this side and she's on this side, and we did not think that she was watching him. So there we are, and it's me, her mommy, and her other auntie, and the 3 of us are watching as she sticks her finger in the cage and the chicken bites it. She doesn't make any sounds. She just goes, whoosh. And so she just like puts her hands in and goes like this. And she's like staring at the chickens, and we're just like, are you okay? Like, that's why we don't stick our fingers in. That's why we do this. And then we're like chastising Auntie's boyfriend for like showing the baby how to stick our fingers in the thing. And as we're all like yelling at him, my tiny, like 13 or 15-month-old niece goes and just like sticks her hand into the crate or into the cage, pulls up the rock that she was initially trying to give the chickens, and tries to give it back to the chicken, but the chicken misses and she gets bit for a second time. And at this point, we're just like, well, you should have, like, what are we supposed to say? At first, it's get mad at the adult who showed the baby how to poke her fingers into the chicken coop. And then when the baby learns how to put her hand into the thing to grab, it's just like, I guess you gotta get bit twice by a chicken before you learn. So the moral of the story is, while you may have the Sinister Six, I think your husband has to get bit one more time before he'll learn. Because obviously my niece didn't learn, has twice learned.
I don't know. I think he's got it. I think he's got.
He's also a whole ass adult, so I would hope so. But oh my god, it was just like the most incredible scenario. Like literally, all of us are just like, Ed, how dare you? Don't teach the baby how to put her hand in the thing. We're putting stuff that the chickens can eat in the crate. That's the point.
I mean, he legitimately knows that fire is hot, right?
I don't know. He's a boy.
Make sure the baby.
The baby knows the fire is hot. The baby learns.
Fire hot. Tree
fire
good,
is
fire
hot.
bad.
Yes, the fire is hot. Luckily, she is a brilliant child and 100% knows that fire is hot.
Good.
Well, on that note, with Duck Duck Goose, your Sinister Six, and your incredible garb, thank you so much for joining me. I had an incredible time.
Thank you for having me.
It was so fun. I love learning new things and getting different perspectives. And honestly, because everything with quarantine is so like literally we're going by the minute. Everything is changing, and our incredible our incredible kingdoms and all of our officers are doing their best to try to make it work, and it's very hard. And whatever we can do to help facilitate active engagement, I'm about it. So thank you so much for participating in this project that I'm doing. It really means a lot to me.
Well, thank you for asking me. I'm honored.
I hope you had fun. This was incredible. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
You're welcome.
Yay!
Bye.